Gampa. Ashwika has been a member of the Toastmasters Bothell Gavel Club, which is a high school Toastmaster level club, for over 4 years and has helped many kids find their own path in public speaking by serving as the club's president and now as junior counselor. She has helped open and lead a new branch of the club that helps kids with informal and creative speaking skills. Over the past 2 years, Ashwika has expanded her public speaking horizons to self-organized workshops, public speaking competitions, and the creation of an inspirational film. With a diverse cultural background and an appreciation for the differences among us, Ashwika strives to inspire others to be peacemakers among all types of people. Ashwika's talk today will describe the steps necessary to redefine the impossible and empower us to be able to shape our own path. I give you Ashwika Gampa, Redefining Impossible. Thank you, Ashwika.
I was sitting on my couch one Saturday afternoon, just scrolling through all the endless channels on the news, and saw something that caught my eye. It was the Americans Got Talent broadcast show, and they had been showing a lot of unique talents that people thought were very interesting. However, there was a common theme between the things that were exciting people. When I was watching TV that day, I saw a multitude of animals having a multitude of talents. There was a singing parrot, a dancing dog, a dog that did acrobatics and jumped over hurdles. I thought this was very intriguing because humans do these things all the time. I mean, look at me. You should see me during finals week trying to dodge through, literally playing The Floor is Lava through my notes to get to my bed. I was very curious at why I was frowned upon for having a messy room and jumping the same hurdles while dogs jumping those hurdles were shown all over TV. So as I was curious, I decided to do some research and learn that the main difference is because us humans have a lot more of a potential than animals. And I was wondering what caused this. Why do we have more of a potential when we are animals ourselves? The main part is the brain. The main difference between the human brain and the animal brain is our metacognition and how we can do complex cognitive abilities like planning, reasoning, and theoretical analysis. Now, I know this is very complex, and after researching for months on end, I was able to compile my research into an illustration. And I wanted to share it with you guys today so I could show you the essence of the human brain and what makes us so special. So on this next slide, I have an illustration. This illustration may seem confusing, but I'm going to break it down. The brain produces actions, memories, feelings, thoughts, dreams, and obstacles. And it is clearly marked in this illustration in the pink area. The biggest takeaway I took away from my ongoing research is that there's a common misconception. Many people believe, and we've been told from a young age, that there's no limit to the brain. However, this is not always true. The biggest obstacle to the brain is the brain itself. And self-inflicting obstacles can differentiate between a successful person and your average human being. This is the brain when it creates its own obstacles. As you can see, there's a subtle change in the brain, and I know if you are not an expert, it's really hard to find. These self-made obstacles are what stop us from success. Today, I'll be giving you the secret of life. I will tell you how to overcome any obstacle, how to redefine the impossible, and I can do that under 5 minutes. But before I do that, I want to dig deeper on this idea of redefining the impossible. I want to see how we can understand this phrase in several examples and then find the secret of life. So I split up redefining the impossible into 2 words, redefine and impossible. So I want you to do a little thinking to yourself. If you could define the word redefine in a phrase or a sentence, what would it be? For me, it's pretty plain and simple. Redefine means to give another definition to or to define again. So let's go to the second word. Now, impossible. Impossible is a little bit more complex. There are two variations for this. The first one is a finite adjective to describe a goal, a hope, a dream, an action. While the second one is a possibility. I'll show you how that works. So the first variation of impossible means unable to accomplish, not possible, and cannot exist. This variation of impossible puts something in a finite category. It labels it as something that is completely out of our reach, something that's all the way out there. While the second variation is very difficult to achieve. This change between these two things is very small. However, it's very important. It gives the thing you're categorizing the potential to be accomplished, the potential to be reached. And this variation will be the difference between success and staying where you are. I want to give an example of someone who has redefined the impossible. Today, I'll share the life story of Mr. David Wilder, who overcame personal impossibles and societal impossibles. Now, Mr. Wilder is a community rights advocate for 35 years. I know, that's a lot. That's older than I am. He is also a Skagit Valley graduate and has cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy affected all 4 of his limbs and paralyzed him. So we have to deal with this condition as well as dealing with people's unintentional assumptions and prejudice. Let's first start going to overcoming personal impossibles. Personal impossibles are impossibles placed on you because of the circumstances you have in life. Now, Mr. Wilder was told, when he was told he had cerebral palsy, he was also told that he would not live past the age of 35. However, this year, he celebrated his 52nd birthday. He has proved this impossible wrong for almost 20 years and is continuing to do so. However, the journey to prove this impossible wrong was not easy. Mr. Wilder grew up in the 70s and 80s, where disability was a foreign thing. Disability wasn't something people knew about. It was not common knowledge. So life wasn't as accessible as it is now. There was not many ramps for wheelchairs or easy push doors for people with disabilities. He told me a story about his grade school experiences. Mr. Wilder started school at around 5 to 6 years old. And in many of his classes, he was the only kid in a wheelchair and the only kid with a disability. And at that young age, he did not have the coordination to be able to wheel himself around. So sometimes he wouldn't be able to make it to the restroom and had accidents. He continued to have this for the ages of 5 to 7 and sometimes even beyond. And he could have dealt with that. He said that part was all right, but the worst part was when kids made fun of him purely because they believed he couldn't get up and do anything about it. And yes, that may be true. He might not have been able to physically get up out of his wheelchair, but he could do something about it, and he constantly does something about it. This ties into the next type of impossible Mr. Wilder overcomes, societal impossibles. Societal impossibles are impossibles society puts upon you. And he's able to experience this. He's had to experience this all of his life, but it was most prominent when he was applying for college. Mr. Wilder was told his entire life college was something out of his reach. College was something that was essentially impossible for him to do. And when he was 19, he tried to apply for financial aid and was told by his case manager, the person who was supposed to support him and help him, that this college degree would be of no use to him and he wouldn't get into college. She asked him to his face, what was he going to do with a college degree? And he said right to her, looked her right in the eye and said he was going to be more successful than her. He said, if you let life walk all over you, you will always let life walk all over you. But the moment you step up is the moment you start living. Even after he graduated Skagit Valley College, people asked him what he was going to do with a college degree, told him that even if he did get a job at some point in life, he wouldn't make enough to sustain himself. But his maternal grandparents and his mother helped him with this wheelchair, told him to keep going. And he says every single door and obstacle he pushed through in life just opened the door a little bit more for the next person going through, for the next person who has stepped into his shoes and had to deal with this in life. So I asked him, after experiencing all these things in life, what advice would he give to the next generation? He said that with his life work of 35 years of community service, what he would give to us is the familiarity of disability. He wants to share his story. He wants to get kids familiar with disability and make this idea of disability common knowledge. He wants kids with disability to be treated normal because they are normal. All of us live with certain circumstances, certain things in life that make us unique. And disability is not anything different. He gave us this quote from President John F. Kennedy's inaugurational speech. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Every single person has something to give to society, even if it's small. And every single person deserves to be valued because of that contribution, no matter who they are, where they come from, or what circumstances they've had to live with. Now, this was Mr. Wilder's motto in life. But during my interview with him, I picked up something else. In the interview, he said if he could get his message through to one person in each audience, then he has accomplished his goal. And I really like that quote. So that's going to be my goal for today. If I can get one of you to redefine the impossible, one of you to grasp something that you thought was always out of your reach, one of you to believe you can reach that peak of that mountain, I have been successful today. So as promised, let's look at the secret of life. Going from impossible to I'm possible. Impossible to I'm possible. A small apostrophe makes the world of a difference. Now, the first step is to change your perspective. The first step is to be able to go from a finite category of impossible to something that has the potential to be accomplished. The main pitfall of this first step is that people close off their mind and over-rationalize their dreams and goals. Rationalization is something that comes naturally as we grow up and mature. And it's something that would protect us if we lived in the Stone Ages. But what it does now is it takes all these societal burdens, it takes all these things like poverty, terrorism, and degrades our goals, makes us create limitations in our mind that don't exist, self-inflicts pain. But if we can put aside this rationalization, if we can open our minds to a chance at accomplishing something, we can change our perspective and open our minds. So once we opened our minds, we go to step 2 to redefine the impossible. Step 2 is to embrace support. Be comfortable in having support around you. Be comfortable in leaning on your friends and family. Now, there's a pitfall for this step as well. The main misconception for this step is that to be successful, you have to rise alone, and you have to do it alone. This, however, could be further from the truth. The truth is that you need support in life. You need support to rise up. We as humans are social animals and thrive on friends and family. That's why we're having such a hard time during COVID. If we can embrace that support and realize that the only way we will rise up is if people rise up with us, then we will succeed. Because at some point in our journey, we will fail. Failure is inevitable. I like to say that failure is the step before success. But to get to that success, you need someone to pick you up after you fail. You need someone to help you get back up, even if you fail 100 times. So opening your heart and embracing support is the most important thing you can do after opening your mind. Now let's look at the third step. We have opened our mind and opened our heart. And the third step, ironically, is taking the first step. Now this may seem kind of weird, but taking the first step is where a lot of people stop because of this thing called fear. The fear factor is extremely controlling and has the ability to cave people and constrict people in. But overcoming this fear is extremely important. One of my favorite mentors in my life told me that if I have everything in my life under control, I'm not living life to its fullest. Life is all about uncertainty, waking up the next day to something unknown, living life as life and not a plan. You have to have elements outside of your control because the only thing that will never change in life is that things are constantly changing. And no matter what I say to you guys today, that fear will never disappear. But I can implore you to embrace that fear. Take it as a part of your journey. Be okay with it being there and not letting it control you. Then only can you take the first step to go from impossible to I'm possible, from impossible to I'm possible, and redefine your impossible. Now, after I've shared my secret of life, I want a show of hands. You can either do it by yourself or raise your hand in the hand reaction. How many of you guys stopped your journey to accomplishing a goal at one of these steps? I see a few hands going up. Okay, I see a lot of our hands going up. This is a common theme in our journey of growing and of thriving. And if I let you stop your journey today, I have failed today. So I want to show you how much I have in common with you guys. And I want to share my story with you guys. My story of achieving the impossible is my public speaking journey. And though I am here today speaking in front of you, I have been through a lot to be where I am, and I jumped through a lot of hoops to come here. My first experience with public speaking was at the Bothell Gavel Club, but it was about 7 years ago. I was in 3rd grade and I walked into this cramped portable. I saw this community of people who wanted to help me learn, this community of people who were learning alongside of me. However, because I went in with a closed mind, because I had placed this thing called public speaking in a finite category of impossible, I saw this community as a group of teenagers, a group of hungry sharks who wanted to eat me alive, waiting for me to make a mistake so they could exploit my weaknesses. I know, over-rationalization. I would love to say that I overcame this in a little bit of time, but guess what? It took me 3 years to give public speaking another chance. I would cry, I would fake being sick, I would do everything in my power to stop going to this community. I would do everything in my power to stop going to this place that would soon be my favorite place in the world. However, after 3 years, I decided to give public speaking another chance. Okay, I'm joking. I did not give public speaking another chance. My father dragged me into that portable, literally glued me to my seat, and walked away. But when I did sit down, I decided to be more open-minded and try to re-experience this thing called public speaking and erase my first impression. Once I did that, once I decided to give public speaking a chance and gave it that potential to be something I could achieve, I saw the community. I recognized how we were all learning, and it wasn't just people trying to see me fail. It was people failing alongside of me, but trying to rise up with everyone else. So once I changed my perspective, I embraced support, but not without falling into the pitfall I talked about. The 3 people up on the board is my father and my 2 teachers at Toastmasters. My original impression of public speaking was that I had to practice alone. I had to do it alone and then present my message to everyone, including my family. But I soon learned that doing it alone doesn't prepare you for speaking in front of an audience. It doesn't give you constructive criticism. It doesn't help you grow. It's just you speaking to yourself, and that is not the essence of public speaking. Mr. Pham is up on the board and was one of my first teachers at Toastmasters. He would volunteer me to take up different roles, volunteer me for speeches, even though I didn't want to. And I saw this sometimes as a curse and tried to make no eye contact with him, tried to lean back and slide into my chair as low as possible so he wouldn't see me. But the moment I changed my perspective and saw as him giving me an opportunity. I embraced the fact that he was supporting me as a teacher. My other teacher, Mr. Gard, started giving me constructive criticism, and I embraced that support and put it into my future speeches. My dad, who I was afraid of speaking in front of because he was my father, was someone I had blocked off for a very long time. But once I started to embrace that support, I realized he was my biggest tool, my biggest supporter, someone who would never judge me, my safe spot. To this day, I always practice my speeches in front of my father and always know I have to rise with others or I don't rise at all. Now for me, taking the first step was my first competition. My first Toastmasters competition was in Seattle. It was filled with all of these people who seemed more experienced than I was, and this fear factor rooted me to the ground, and I didn't eat from the beginning of that day to when I finished my speech. I was extremely petrified. And the moment I got onto that stage, I realized there's no turning back now. I can't run out that door even if I wanted to. So I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. And then I realized, why am I so afraid? I asked myself this question, and the moment I did, the fear turned into excitement and fueled me because I hadn't eaten for 3 hours. And I realized that my favorite thing about public speaking is the rush of excitement, the rush of fear itself as well. I loved not knowing what would come next. I loved not knowing how the audience would react to me and how I would interact with the audience. And that helped me do very well in my first competition and inspired me to do more and more and take every opportunity possible to talk to people and to be around people. So that is my story of changing my perspective, embracing support, and taking the first step in my public speaking journey. Now, before this session, we sent out a promotional video that challenged you guys in our community to share your impossibles with us and take that first step of acknowledging your impossibles. So today I have a small compilation of all the responses we got, and we are very thankful that you guys all took up our challenge. If you had read some of the impossibles on there, you would see that we all have this in common. We all have faults, and we all have to recognize it. I challenged you to take that first step of acknowledging your impossibles so you can take that first step from going to impossible to I'm possible, from going from impossible to I'm possible. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share my message. I loved interacting with you guys and speaking here today, and I would love if we could have a quick Q&A session and I could answer a couple of questions.
Thank you. So if you have a question, we've had a few come in. Ashwika has just a couple minutes left. Yeah, let's give her the good old round of applause, Ashwika. Thank you. I'll wave my cards. If you have a question quickly for Ashwika, we'll take about 90 seconds. I have one already for you, Ashwika. How do you control the fear factor when trying to accomplish a big goal?
That's a really good question and something I've asked myself for most of my life. But it's not about controlling the fear factor. No matter what you do, our natural response to doing anything out of the ordinary is fear. That's why throughout history, we've had things like wars, we've had things like explorations, because fear of the uncertainty is just something in our nature. But the difference between being controlled by fear and embracing fear is that you accept that it's there. A lot of the time people try to block out that fear, try to control it, but it just makes it grow. If you acknowledge that it's there and just accept it, it takes over and it really helps you overcome your biggest challenges.
Beautiful. So thank you, Ashwika. And another similar question came in, which is how do you get unstuck from fear, which is acknowledge maybe like the rain in the Northwest, it's there, but you're still going to go after your goal, right? The goal is not dependent on whether there's rain or not. We know that in the Northwest. Awesome. Oh, do we have time for one more question? I'm just looking at a quick one here. How can you change your perspective when you've already had a few struggles or setbacks? What's one tip you could give people to change your perspective back to I'm possible?
The biggest way to change your perspective is to erase your experiences. A lot of us make assumptions about each other. A lot of us already have stereotypes in our mind because it's something we've grown up around. But trying to erase what you've already experienced, taking it upon yourself to experience it again and looking at it as something new will really help you erase that, because it's very difficult to overcome your first impression if you still think of it as your first impression. For me, when I tried to do public speaking again, I thought of it as trying to do something new and not trying to do public speaking a second time. Thank you so much, everyone.
Nan, if you
Nan,
could
you're
unmute,
on
please.
mute.
Thank you for that, Q. Appreciate that so much. There's a couple more questions. We have time just to wrap up with Ashwika. Ashwika, again, are you 15 or how old are you, Ashwika?
I'm 15 years old and a sophomore in high school.
15 years old and a sophomore. Wonderful. It was wonderful to have you tonight. You're an inspiration to all of us. And there's a couple
Thank
questions
you so
in the
much,
chat.
everyone.